Welcome back to the studio. As you can see, I've got the loom completely dressed with both the gray and the white from the previous video. I got all tied onto the front apron beam and everything. Today we're going to be doing the treadling or the tie-up and the treadling for the 4 different patterns. And they are, the fun thing about what I'm doing here is that because they have all of the same threading, all I have to do is manipulate either the tie-up or the treadling to get a completely different pattern, which is just so much fun to me. I just love being able to manipulate the yarn in as many different ways as possible without having to like redress the loom 100 different times. So it was kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to do this little experiment, was to see, I could probably even do more than 4, changing up tie-ups and treadlings and all that kind of thing, but I just thought I'd keep it small for this time. And I will show you all 4 patterns that I'm going to be doing and how they differentiate. I will pop the patterns up here as we go, so that you can see exactly what I'm doing for the different blankets, because as you recall from the last video, they all have the same threading. So I did a modified M&W threading, which I will also show you. I'm just going to move the camera down below, and then I will show you how I get the tie-ups all taken care of. So I am going to start with treadle 1, which is going to be this one. I actually have 14 treadles here, and I like to use my main treadles 1 through 8, which are going to be the main pattern treadles in the middle. It's just a lot easier, it's a lot less moving around. But because I am using harnesses 9 and 10 as well for just some of the plain weave stuff, I am going to be using some of my outside treadles for that part. But we're just going to start with the main pattern treadles right now. So I'm going to start with number 1. And for number 1, I need to tie up harness 1, 3, 4, 6, and 7. And I always start in the back, so I'm going to start with harness number 7. And all I need to do here is just count back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and pull that down. Sometimes I need both hands to do it. So, got that down. And then I'm going to take my hooks here. These are called super hooks, and these came with my I actually had to buy these separately because my loom didn't actually come with any at all. And the lady that I bought it from was supposed to send them to me when she found them. I assume she's never found them because I still haven't got them. That's okay. I called up Nate Copper and they sent me some out. So easy peasy. Okay, so that is all there is to it. You just plop that sucker in there and hook the super hook up to the top of the, I guess this would be the jack frame or the bottom bar frame jack. I don't know what the technical term for that is, but anyway, got it on there. Okay, so now I've got that one on. I need to do harness number 6. And then for that, I can just go ahead and feel up here. Since I got number 7 in, it's going to be the next one in front of it. And then just stick that guy on there like that. Back. And then number 4 is going to be that one. And just pull that down. Sure I got number 4. Yep, I did. Goes in there. I gotta say, putting these on is a whole lot easier than actually taking them off. So this part should go pretty quick. When it comes to taking them off, that's going to be a whole nother ball of wax. Alright, and then number 3. And I do apologize for the bad lighting down here. I know it's probably hard to see. I tried everything I could think of to get some better lighting down here, and I just could not find anything that would get me better light. Unless I go buy something, which I didn't want to do. So, alright, that is treadle 1 all ready to go. And I always like to just pull them down and just double check to make sure I've got all the right ones. So I've got one, skip a spot. So then 3, 4, skip a spot, 6 and 7, and we are good to go on that one. All right, so 1 down and 9 more to go. I'll see you at the other end. So I mentioned before that I needed to tie up harnesses 9 and 10 for my plain weave, and I actually was wrong, and I was thinking, I'm not sure what I was thinking, but anyway, I ended up having to go back and add tie-ups for harnesses 9 and 10 for the side plain weave that I had going. I had a border plain weave, and those were harnesses 9 and 10, and I actually did tie-ups for plain weave by doing every other harness. So, and you'll see that I have a little clip of that as well. Okay, so I've got all of the main pattern treadles tied up. I am going to, sometimes I do, if I'm doing plain weave, I'll do like one on this side and one on that side. But I think this time I'm going to try doing the plain weave treadles just with these two. I think it might be a little bit easier, especially since I'm using 8 heddles in the middle. So I'm going to go ahead and get those tied up, and then we should be good to start weaving. Okay, let's talk about the threading. So the threading I have used is a modified M&W, and when I say that, I mean that most M&W patterns have a like one small bump and then 2 large bumps. And what I mean by that is that it goes from 1 to 8 and then down to 1 and then up to 4 and back down to 1 and then up to 8 and back down to 1. And I have added 3 small bumps on the M and 2 small bumps on the W. And I did that just honestly because I thought it looked cool, and it gives it a really fun variation on the pattern. So with the first blanket, I am simply doing the same treadling as the threading. So I have the M and then the W and then the M and then the W and so on and so forth. And I did each blanket approximately 37 inches. It did come out a little bit shorter than I had originally intended, but I think I think I stretched them too much. I had too much tension on them, and so the spring back was a little bit more than I had anticipated for, but it's fine. They're baby blankets. They don't have to be huge. So anyway, let's get this going a little bit faster, and we'll get to the other end and we'll move on to the next blanket. All right, done with blanket number 1, and here we are. I'm found out later that I didn't actually need to remove all these, so I'm going to remove them all, and now I am going to put them all back. I was not paying attention to the pattern very closely, but basically the tie-up for number 2 is you'll see those red X's on the tie-up draft there. Those were the only ones I needed to remove for pattern number 2 and 3. So anyway, I put them all back and then just removed the ones that I needed to remove. So it's actually really similar to the first one, as you can see, but you'd be surprised at how removing one tie-up or one row of tie-ups like that really changes a pattern. And I'm going to be completely honest with you, this one is probably my favorite one of all 4 of them. And yeah, it's just me figuring out, and you can see how hard it is to wiggle some of those loose after you've been using them. Sometimes after I've done like a super long pattern, it is knuckle busting to get those suckers off, but they work really well. And yeah, here's the last one. There we go. All right, here we go with blanket number 2. Alright, so I've got all of the tie-ups removed that I need, and here I thought it'd be kind of nice to see what a side-by-side comparison of the 2 patterns looks like. And you can see how now the blue color is really popping, and I'm actually doing this one in orange, and to be honest, this is going to be, of all 4 blankets, this is going to be my favorite one. After they're all finished, it just, the orange really just pops, and I just love the way this pattern turned out. But yeah, you can see what happens to that pattern just by simply removing one tie-up. So in between each blanket, I am placing just this spacer, I guess if you want to call it that. It's just simply some waste blue worsted weight yarn. I just did about an inch or inch and a half. I didn't really measure or anything, just give it a nice little space in between. Alright, now this has got to be by far my favorite pattern, and you can just see how lovely it's emerging out. I love this tangerine color. I was a bit dubious at first to use this bright color, but once I got it going, with the white kind of tones it down a little bit, and it just is absolutely my favorite out of all 4 blankets. Now for the moment of truth, will all of those knots get through that reed without breaking or falling apart? And ta-da! The answer to that is yes, they did. I did not lose a single knot. I am simply, right here, I'm just sort of easing the knots through the reed very gently by pulling up. I'm not yanking or pulling with tension. I'm just pulling up, and that is just helping those knots to sort of wiggle their way through. And like I said, did not lose a single knot. I was super excited about that. Later you're gonna see me add a cardboard, spacer cardboard in there, and that was really important. So if you're ever doing this, definitely go ahead and add that extra cardboard in the front. Right now I am putting in the blue spacer, and you see that I did 2 rows and then did the beat, and then 2 rows and then did another beat, and this really helped to get all of the gray threads properly aligned, and it just worked out beautifully. Okay, here we are with blanket number 3. As you can see, the threading and the tie-up have remained the same from the last blanket, and we are just going to do a different treadling. I really love this treadling. It was a little bit hard to keep track of, but I used the I Weave It program, and that definitely helped. But yeah, this actually turned out to be my second favorite blanket. But I do love twills, and this is kind of a twill type pattern. So I guess that's why I like it so much. It was also a really nice, easy repeat. You just do 8, 7, 6, 5, and then you do 7, 6, 5, 4, and then 6, 5, 4, 3, and so on and so forth until you get down to the bottom, and then you just go back up. And it was really easy. When I first started, I had a little bit of a problem keeping track, but after a while, it just became super repetitive and really easy. Definitely, if you have to stop in the middle, make sure you mark it somehow. Whether I use the I Weave It program, so it always just mark it whenever I stopped to wherever I left off, and that way when I came back, I could remember where I pick it up, because you use same treadles over and over and over again, and if you're on, say, the 6, 5, 4, 3, and you come back and you start with 5, 4, 3, 2, you're gonna get totally lost. But so definitely, if you get it memorized, make sure you keep track of where you're at. If you have to stop in the middle or something, I always tried to stop at either the very beginning or the very end of the repeat, just to make things a little bit easier. But occasionally I did have to kind of stop in the middle due to reasons, and so I would use the I Weave It program and just track it there, which made it super easy. I did on this one and the next one beat a little bit too hard. For this one, it turned out okay. It really helped the pattern to pop a little bit more, but you'll see on the next one, I definitely beat it too hard, and we'll take a look at that when we get to that one. But let's just finish up with blanket number 3, and we'll catch up to you with blanket number 4. Alright, so here is a little side-by-side of all of the different tie-ups, and you can see how 1 and 2 are very, very similar. I've simply removed one of those diagonal lines from tie-up 1 to create tie-up 2, which, as you can see, created really drastic difference. You would think such a small change would create that big a difference, but it really does. And now with tie-up number 3, I've actually completely changed the direction of those diagonals, and I've also added a bunch more back in, and yeah, so it's just completely different. I did end up having to, of course, remove all of the tie-ups and do them all over again. I didn't get any video of that because I think you've seen me tie up things enough to know how that works. But anyway, yeah, so then when it comes to the treadling for this one, I just did a simple 1 to 4 and back down to 1, and then 8 to 5, and then back up to 8, and I'll show you that as well. And let's get started on the last blanket. As you can see, here's what the blanket looks like in the draft. Something else I've learned doing these blankets is that what you see in the draft doesn't always translate very well to the blanket, and that would be this prime example. And I think this mostly because I think I just beat too hard on this one. Probably if I hadn't beat it quite as hard, it would have been fine. But definitely when you're creating your own patterns, you kind of have to take them with a grain of salt because they may not end up exactly the way that you were intending them to look like. But it's okay. I still like it. It's really soft blanket. It's a little bit, the reason I think that I just beat too hard was because it's actually quite a bit stiffer than the other blankets, even though the yarn is all the same. And I think it's just because I compacted much more yarn into a much smaller space, and I didn't really like measure as far as like how many picks per inch or anything I was doing. I was just kind of doing it all by look and feel, and that's not always the best approach. But when you're kind of experimenting and you just don't really, it doesn't really matter like what you're doing it for or how you're doing it, that's fine. And that's kind of what this was, just a little experiment to see, could I do 4 blankets all at the same time with the same threading? And the answer to that is a resounding yes, but you do have to be careful with what patterns you're using and how you're doing it. But anyway, let's just finish up blanket number 4 here, and I will see you when we're cutting it off. Alright, and here are each of the 4 blankets, completely unfinished, but just cut off the loom. I haven't done any wet finishing or anything. And I folded over the one side so you could see the front and the back of it, each one. I gotta say that the 2 middle ones are by far my 2 favorites. And the yellow one, not a big fan. Didn't really like the way that one came out, but oh well, you don't know until you try. And here we are finishing them up. They have all been wet finished, and with acrylic blankets, I throw them in the washer and dryer. I make no bones about it. It's acrylic, it's not wool, it's fine. I serged off the blue. I didn't get any video of that, sorry, but I just used my serger and I serged off the blue separator between each blanket and at the ends. And here I am. I like to do this thing where I fold each of the corners down at a 45-degree angle. I just think that this just gives each of the blankets a much nicer finished corner, because otherwise they like to do this weird thing where it kind of fans out, and that's just due to the nature of hand woven items. They kind of stretch, and so you can see there I just ironed those corners down at a 45-degree angle, and then I fold over each end twice, and I use that little guideline. That's what I put that there for, to know exactly where to put that finishing fold, to give the front side of the blanket a really nice, neat, finished edge. And then after I get this all ironed down, and I am not using a very hot iron, again, it's acrylic, so if you use it too hot, you're gonna melt it. So I have it set somewhere between wool and silk. I think ours actually has like a polyester setting on it, or an acrylic type setting, which is just that nice medium heat. So then after I get those all ironed down, I'm just going to put these little sewing clips on, which I love because they don't poke you like pins do. Okay, so I've got all of them ironed and clipped, and I'm just taking it over to my sewing machine here. Now for this one I did a zigzag stitch, which works just fine, but then I did the other 3 with just a regular straight stitch, which also worked just fine. I just kind of wanted to see what the difference was, and it really, there's not much of a difference other than it's just like a thicker hem, I guess, with the zigzag stitch. But it wasn't really necessary, so I didn't do it for the rest of them. And yep, that's side 1, and then we'll just do side 2. And had to adjust my clips there so I didn't get them in the way. You do need to be really careful when sewing hand knit items because it is so stretchy most of the time, especially with acrylic, that you don't overstretch as you're feeding the fabric through the machine. And if you have a way to adjust your feed dogs so that they don't stretch your fabric too much as you're going through, then I would recommend that. I haven't figured out how to do that on this particular sewing machine. I know that there is a way, I just don't know how to do it yet. It's not something I do on a regular basis. So alright, all done with the sewing, and we have 4 beautifully finished baby blankets that will get donated to a local charity. If you like this video, please subscribe and like for more content.